All right, guys. We're going to be here today starting a tier list for the late August format going to September since we don't have a ban list. So we got everything from tier 1.5 to not good, which we wouldn't recommend playing until, the ban list drops. So for the first deck we have here is Rika Sun Avalon. I think on the US or in the US, it doesn't really have the most representation, but it is a really good deck in the hands of the right pilot. It kind of has that title reserved for it, as the deck has that kind of what it's synonymous with. So we'll say I'd put it in high tier 2, just for representation. I know it's higher elsewhere, but yeah, love to hear your guys' opinion on Rika Sun Avalon.
I believe it has the capabilities competing with one of these higher tier decks. And for that reason, I place it a little higher. But I think it's fair that because it's not seen played as often, yeah, tier 1.5, tier 2 is where it should go.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say 1.5 just because it's a pretty good deck, and I guess Droll is the only factor that might put it in check, but it can either be that or the highest tier 2.
Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with what Brian said in the beginning. It's like more in the hands of the right pilot. It can be a very strong deck. So I was going to put it in like 1.5, but I think high tier 2 is.
Okay, I'll leave it at 2 for now, and then we'll probably end up putting it at the bottom of 1.5 as we're assembling that. So I feel like that's the most important factor of where this one kind of stands. So kind of tough one to start on. Yeah, so we have next. This deck has been getting a lot of traction recently. A little bit of hype, but at the same time, it deserves it. I feel like just because it has a lot of odd interactions. You get a turn 1 snipe out of your opponent's hand, which is pretty unfair. The only issue I see with it is that it can have some consistency issues, not as necessarily getting to the engine, but linearly, I feel like the choke points are very obvious, and overall, it's just pretty easy pretty easy to shut down this deck. So I'd put it in somewhere in 1.5, kind of like in the middle-ish.
For this one, I was gonna say tier 2 because Ash and Imperm are the most used staples, and the choke points are so easy. You just Ash the Knight or Imperm the Helmet, and sometimes they just pass on nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my argument for tier 2. It's still a good deck, right? Like you said, the snipe, and then it has like some negations from the grave and really good follow-up. But the choke points are like too harsh on them, like harsher than Ash on Branded Fusion kind of thing.
Yeah, I would have to kind of agree with that. I was actually going to put it in the road section just because I think right now what it has going for it is that it's kind of like a sleeper deck, right? Nobody really knows. If you don't know how to play against it kind of easily, I guess, and if you do know the points and the social song, then it's like fragile.
Yeah, I'm torn really. I feel like it can be. I rate higher than Brandon and Jesus. I do think it has even tier 1 capabilities if a Rise Heart is not in the format. But it's a new deck and still getting figured out. So, whereas Sun Avalon Rika has been out for a while, people know how to use it, how to pilot it. And so I can see them being in the same tier for now.
Okay. I kind of want to put it
I feel like we
for now. Yeah,
we can swap them.
We should swap them.
Yes, because, like we said, the hand traps are so popular against that deck that it's always do what to hit. But against Sun Avalon Rika, some people don't even know what to hit against that deck. So sometimes they just get wins just because of that. Right?
Yeah, I see that. But I feel like Ernie brought up a good point that the deck isn't even close to being solved. So the fact that it is considered on a topping level, getting a lot of first place and top fours at the newest regionals and events right now, I think that's already kind of putting it on a higher edge. Yeah, it is new. Less people. People don't really know the choke point as much, but then again, people barely know the choke point of Rika Sun Avalon, and that deck's been out for a couple of years, just evolving over time. So I think it's just for its potential, like it's not even innovated yet, and it's doing really well. So, but yeah, I'll leave it like this for now. Another one kind of start off a little bit difficult to place. But I think this one's gonna be pretty easy to place. Next we have Runic for higher Sprite. I think this deck is. I think people just don't really want to play this deck anymore just because they're anticipating a hit. So I'm seeing a little bit less numbers and even just tops on large events or regionals. So I'd honestly just put it in tier 2, probably in the middle-ish. High, middle, kind of.
I agree with that. I mean, like, Droll hits them pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's a fair. Even Rogue placing really. But if the deck is effective at what it does, it just is kind of telegraphed. Everything you know it's coming. Nothing surprises you. You know they have a handful of runic cards. You play around those, and the deck kind of. Yeah, you play around those, and you play around the for hire cards, and the deck falls flat really. So I don't rate it as highly, but tier 2 is fine.
Okay. And then this one's an interesting one just because it's beginning a little bit more traction since it topped Nats. So it's Heroes. I'd probably just put it on Rogue. The deck hasn't really changed other than people trying more Neos type builds, or I feel like the Omni build does what it does, but the choke points are way more obvious in the Omni build. Whereas like the Neos build, like people don't really know it as much. So they don't know the choke points. And I feel like it's doing, I've seen it get in a couple tops at regionals and stuff, but yeah, I'd just put it in Rogue, honestly.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I mean, another deck that loses to Droll, basically.
Yeah, it's going to be a common theme here for the ban list.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I actually really like Rogue for Heroes too. I feel like, it's gained popularity, but it still loses to the same stuff it's always lost to. Nothing has really changed. It's just same.
Nibiru.
Yeah, it's just
yeah, Nibiru is very popular as well in the format. All right. Yeah, Rogue is pretty self-explanatory. And then Flu, I feel like it doesn't deserve a tier 2 spot, but I definitely put it above Heroes. This has won a Florida regional last weekend, first place. And then I haven't really looked into other tops that it had, but as a pick, it doesn't have any good matchups and it doesn't have any horrible matchups. It's just, hand traps versus the birds. That's basically what it comes down to for this deck.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I guess I had it a little bit higher at tier 2, but I guess listening to what you said, Rogue also sounds fine. It is pretty much just Heroes but different. I feel like so. Sure, Rogue also works.
And then we got Altergeist. Now this one's a little interesting. I feel like it was popular when the most recent set dropped for the new support. But then like 2 weeks after that, no one wants to play this deck. So that kind of tells you how it is. I feel like ever since adding support, yes, the ceiling is higher. It does have more power. I wouldn't say it's more consistent. It feels about the same consistency wise, but it just feels like the deck doesn't know what it wants to do. So it fails on 2 areas that a control deck typically has, which is, it just not relying on the back row anymore. It's relying on trying to get that combo going. Otherwise, it just defaults back to its original self, just even slightly more bricky if you just don't draw the right combination of cards. So I feel like, and
Yeah.
also particularly, it doesn't have any strong matchups. Like, I don't know why you would play this over another control deck that's better than this in the format. I don't really see it. It just loses to Nib and Droll even a little bit. So
Harder.
for a control deck to lose to those two really staple hand traps, plus the other obligatory Ash Imperm, I would just put this like honestly below freaking Heroes.
And the not
I just
good,
don't really. I just don't think the deck's good.
not good section.
You think it's not good?
I think it's
Well, there's so many better options. I mean, it's better than before, but
Yeah.
all these other decks just feel much better. You know what they do or what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think it's a not good deck. I think people, like you said, were hype over new cards, to a old deck that people love. I love Multigex, but I definitely think the new cards just are not it. It's just not good, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Ernie?
Not really. I don't think it's that bad. But the new cards don't really give it an edge that it otherwise didn't have before. So it's not as good. But I definitely think it can do something. Mostly because people don't know how to play against it. But yeah, I wouldn't play it either. So maybe not good is the right place for it.
Yeah, I think let's set the precedent of something that we would personally not play this format as not good. So yeah, I agree then. If we're going by that criteria, I would put it in not good. Yeah, Rescue Ace. I thought this deck was a little bit worse. I have like the opposite opinion from Altergeist. I thought it was a little bit worse when it first came out. And now I think it's pretty good just because people started innovating it a little bit more, mainly with like the extra deck plays. So I kind of like it in high tier 2 and 1.5. I'm having a little bit of trouble deciding between the two, maybe low tier 1.5, but
Maybe it could be the last in 1.5.
yeah, it could be the last in 1.5. Yeah, the only issue I think it has is like maybe a little bit of consistency. Sometimes some hands aren't stronger than the others. Like there's definitely like a gap between a good hand and a really bad unplayable hand, just because of all the bricky cards. But other than that, it's got a good ceiling. It's got really good matchups. Like universally, I feel like it has good matchups almost all these decks that we have here. Or like, it's not going to absolutely fold to some of these decks. So yeah, I'd put it in 1.5, lowest 1.5 maybe.
Yeah, I'll put it there too. I mean, set 4, pretty good.
Yeah,
I agree. And the extra deck is a giant toolbox. Like they don't really even need to go into it, but there's endless things that they can do once they decide to really. But yeah, usually just set 4 is enough to win a lot of games.
Yeah, I also like 1.5. I think it's a crazy deck that has yet to be like fully discovered, right? Yeah, 1.5 definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And then we have Infernoble. This one, I mean, it loses to. I guess I'll put these two together really close to each other right now, because these get compared a lot in my opinion, just because they're kind of like the combo decks in the format that get checked by Droll. So like if we're taking Vanadium into the equation, like I feel like it is a little bit worse than Vanadium. Like Vanadium has better extenders, but Infernoble has like, I feel just like a stronger end board, just other than like Dark Ruler no more impacting it. But that's literally one card in the format that I don't think anyone wants to side Dark Ruler. So I'd put it probably tier 2, a little bit above the or higher deck, and I'd probably put this. I'm gonna put this like right here. I don't know where you guys stand on this.
Well, for me, I put both of them in 1.5 because they're both, along with Ras and Avalon Rika, they're the combo decks, like you said, that we can roll. But when their combo goes off, those boards are like pretty difficult to get through. Like you probably lost if you didn't open the draw. And I mean, Vanadium has a Calamity, so that's much better than a hand rip or like the Chimera deck, right?
I feel like no one plays the Calamity build. I feel like it's the most interactions they set on a Vanadium end board is usually going to be a Baron, an Apo for 3 or 4, possibly maybe the counter trap if they can get to it, and a Dispater or Dispatter Bestial. So that's the best that they can pump out, which is good, but that's a single Kurakara answers pretty much both of these decks, and that's like a really popular card. And at the same time, I don't think you need Droll to beat these decks. 2 Imperms usually does it half the time, so I don't know. From my experience, I feel like they're both a little overrated.
I would personally put Vanadium in 1.5, and I would keep the Fire Warrior in tier 2. I feel like the Fire Warrior definitely, like you said, loses to 2 Imperms. I feel like Vanadium maybe won't lose, won't lose the 2 Imperms. But I feel like the Infernoble deck definitely. So I don't know, kind of like because of that, I feel like the extenders that Vanadium has are just kind of better for the deck, like the spell card that lets you just draw, but went to the bottom, kind of fixes your hand, things like that. Of course, they both lose to draw, but I mean, say they both get to play, I think Vanadium is honestly a better deck.
Yeah,
I think regardless of whether we put them, I think Chimera branded needs to be a cut above based off of results alone. So I think we're thinking ceiling when it comes to these decks, and the Chimera branded one, that's where it gets vague because we're not sure. But just this format alone, I feel like it's had better results and more representation than both Vanadium and Infernoble.
So you're thinking maybe this would kind of fix it. Maybe the highest tier 2, because we do have to kind of respect it at the same time. A lot of people are main decking Droll just for this deck and Infernoble. So that I think they're just kind of in check. I feel like that's what's kind of preventing them from being pushed over the edge, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, but I do like your argument of the Chimera deck. This feels right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happier with this too now that we're starting to build it out. This one's going to be easy. I think Cash is just going to be up here. And I like no discussions there. Rice Heart, too good. Shifter's too good. Yep.
Rice Heart fan.
Yeah, Rice Heart pass. Yep. Labyrinth. I still think it's better than those tier 2 decks. So I honestly think it's just better than those tier 2 decks below.
I was gonna say just put it as a second 1.5. I mean,
the second 1.5. You think it's ahead Rescue Ace?
Yeah,
I feel like it has lower representation right now.
Mm-hmm.
It did win Toronto Regional, but it had a really good pilot, Ryan Yu. So I feel like, yeah, it has less tops than Chimera, so then maybe Rescue Ace should move down like this, or does that not feel right?
No, it feels like it's better than those 2 decks, just because I think people just weren't even sure what to hit with the Chimera deck, so maybe that's why I got some of those wins.
Mm-hmm.
But now we know. Now we know what to hit.
I think Lab is in a good place this format because it doesn't lose to Droll, which everyone seems to be high on right now, for good reason. And also
And
in the grind game, correct. And in the grind game, it's just like it's probably going to outgrind a lot of these decks that are in the same tier. Maybe with the exception of Chimera because they accumulate a lot of resources. But still, Lab needs one card to go off, whereas these other decks need multiple pieces. Need to see multiple pieces, and I think that's where Lab shines.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Ernie on Lab as well. To be honest, I put it in tier 1 right next to Cashera. Of course, it does have like low representation right now because people want to try new stuff, and maybe I feel like maybe it does have a bad Chimera matchup, just because Chimera has like in-inch back row options. But I mean, that doesn't mean Lab is just not like really good deck, right? Like I feel like it's just like in a really good spot where Ernie's. It really is. I would put it to.
Okay, I'll put it above the Sun Avalon for now. Then
another thing I think is important to
uh-huh.
mention is that Lab is very versatile in the way you can build the deck. You can build it with heavy blowout cards, floodgates, and I think that may attract different players to pilot the deck and then push its representation up as well.
Yeah, we could also see more numbers as this becomes cheaper in the tins too. So also one thing to consider. Yeah, Marine says. I feel like I don't know. Is this deck better than Circular, the deck right next to it? It does play. I feel like a lot of people don't know how to hand trap this deck, so it does get a little bit of bonus points there. And in the hands of a good pilot, it can do some decent things, but I still think it's probably below Blunder.
Yeah, I mean they're probably both in broke then. Math making differences.
Yeah, I'd probably just put it like this.
Yeah, I mean we can't really compare them against like Vanadium and Inferno.
Yeah, those ceilings are just way higher than these decks can do. So
Yeah, for
sure. Do we see Salamangreat on the same way? Should we place it there now?
yeah, I think if we place Salamangreat, it has pretty good representation. I kind of want to put it to. I'm kind of stuck between putting it ahead of for Higher Runic, but I think it has a good place behind it because out of respect for Higher Runic, it has some good matchups. Especially if it's uninterrupted, the Runic sprite for higher end board is just way better than the Salamangreat interruption slash end boards, and the choke points aren't as bad. Like getting nibbed in that deck isn't as bad as getting nibbed in Salad.
Yeah, we can leave it there. It's a good place.
Yeah, there. It's I feel like if we're talking representation and wins, it was stuff recently.
How about Branded? This one's a little tough. A lot of people love this deck, but I think it's a really good deck. It suffers from the typical problem it's always had, which is lack of non-engine. So it has to be able to beat decks engine for engine while also being uninterrupted and fulfilling like those engine combos. So it can't play really good hand traps in the main, like Nib, Troll. It can barely fit Ash and Imperm for cross out designator targets if they're deciding to go that route. So I think it's struggling a little bit right now, but it still has a really high ceiling, really, really good grind game, has really good matchups against a lot of those 1.5 decks, I think. In tier 2, it just has well-rounded matchups. It just suffers the same problem that it's always had. But I feel like now that the format is so diverse, it can hardly keep up with trying to stop other decks when they go second. So I probably just I'd put it above Infernoble still. It hasn't lost anything really in the ban list other than Expulsion. You can still gimmick Puppet Lock. I know a lot of people are starting to stray away from that, but the ceiling is just still there.
I have no opinion. I mean, I was gonna say 1.5 because it's still a good deck, but I don't. Yeah, no more comments from me.
Yeah, I rate it higher too. I think branded Despia is stronger than branded Chimera right now. Um, they've been out for a lot longer. They know what they're trying to do, whereas the other deck is still trying to figure that out. And I think in terms of power level, in the hands of the right pilot, it can do just as well as Lab. Which is why I see it in 1.5.
Okay, that was a good argument. Hmm. See, now I'm torn. I thought it was. I was with Brian at first, putting it in tier 2, pretty much exactly where he has it. Better than Fire Warrior, but maybe not as good as Manadia. And personally, I feel like the Chimera branded was maybe better than the Despia branded. But again, I don't have too much experience with the Chimera branded. I just have kind of seen some videos and watched the replays and stuff. It just looked like it could play through Ash a little bit better, basically. So, but I don't know. I'll let you guys decide.
Maybe we just put it ahead of a Vanadium.
Sure.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty easy, just between one or the other. I feel like it's still. I kind of want to put it behind Cash, just because since no one really is playing Cash. But engine for engine, I still feel like this deck can struggle against Cash, and vice versa. I don't know. It's pretty even, but I'll give it a little bit over the edge on Cash Tira just because of numbers alone. But like, because Cash is still like winning regionals. I think it just won the Santa Clara regional yesterday. Yeah. And they were in the finals together too. It was a Cash mirror match.
Yeah. So I'd say Cash should be ahead.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter who wins the die roll as well, because Zeus is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just outplay your opponent, you'll win. But a Rise Hard Pass is pretty good against almost everything. So I'd put it ahead. I put Cash ahead of Purely, but they're both good decks.
Yeah, I would also put Cash ahead, but I do think Purely is really, really good also.
Right. I think because Purely loses the head-to-head versus Cash, maybe that's reason alone enough to put Cash ahead of it. I'm not sure how Purely, like if they open shift, or does Purely just lose? So yeah, I think that this is the right way to put those two in tier 1.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree with all that. Vanquish Soul, as I think this deck is pretty good into some of these decks, like Purely. A lot of the combo decks, I feel like this deck just actually pretty good against. It has access to Small World Kurakara. It can play Nib in the main. It can play Fenrir. Just has a lot of flexible utility spots that a lot of these other decks just can't do. The issue is it relies on one card, which is Rosin. And if you don't see it, the ceiling gets extremely low. So, but the resource grind is pretty good overall. It can play degenerate side deck cards like D-Barrier, Tikaboo, all that stuff, all that good stuff. However, it's actually had some pretty good performances in the last few weeks. It had several tops. Not sure if it had a first place win, but it definitely had a top 4 and a few top 8s and stuff like that here and there at various regionals. So I'd probably put it up a little bit above a Salad, just because I feel like, I don't know, it just has a really good matchups like between a lot of these decks. I feel like compared to Salad, and it's a little bit harder to read. Like you could always just normal summon a monster. They try to imperm that monster, and you can just bounce and kind of dodge weird things. But definitely can be easy to telegraph. That's the downside, I feel like.
Yeah, I put it there too. I mean, it's kind of a fair deck, and like you said, it does have good matchups, and I feel like it has the best matchups against the top decks because it can do the small world into Kurikara play, and even their little quick play, the Book of Moon, that can kind of shut down those decks as well, just because they just lose to book kind of thing. Yeah, and that's where I'll put it. All the other cards are pretty fair. They're like pops and like draws, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is fair.
Okay. Pretty straightforward there on that one then. So this is the deck. This is the junk deck or the Adventure Synchron or Adventure Synchro strategy. Yeah, this one's just underperforming. I would just honestly put it in not good. It doesn't sound like a fun or enjoyable experience just off alone opening 3 Synchrons in your hand and 1 playable card and just trying to figuring out the lines. I feel like the risk for the reward just doesn't pay off. When you could just play something more consistent like Infernoble, Vanadium, solidified strategies than just kind of like hoping you draw something good. This deck, I feel like it's just way too bricky.
I was gonna say Rogue. Well, just because if the combo goes through, they can rip your hand with the Omega. There's Omega, and then they do this pattern, bring it back, and then rip another card, and all this while setting up like negates like this pattern Baron. But yeah, sometimes they do just break, and I feel like another reason might be like the cost. I don't know if it's too pricey to play this card, and then just people don't want to break at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a combination of things for that.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that. No,
go for it, Ernie.
Go ahead, Brandon. Well, you make a good point with the cost of Revolution still being high. Maybe that's why I haven't seen it, because I've only ever seen this deck full combo in YouTube combo videos, which is maybe why I don't fear it. I've never seen them do anything really. I put them at the bottom of Rogue, if not stay where it is and not good.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I never thought about the price and the representation. Really, I kind of just see because for me, Revolution Synchron, there's so many ways to play it, right? So I've played it quite a few ways. So there's some ways that I really like it, and some ways that I don't think are good. So I think for that, I would put it in Rogue because it's like unexplored. I would say people don't really. It's not solved at all. There's so many different ways people play the junk with all the synchrons, the big spam of the board where you summon all 4 names, whatever. But personally, I think it's a lot stronger in like a runic variant, like like a more of like a runic synchro kind of deck. I think that's where it shines a lot more. So I would say definitely a rogue kind of deck. If you're playing junk sync or any revolution synchro, then it's probably.
Well, I think if we're talking the actual like junk deck, but not a deck that uses this as its key piece, because I think even something like Vanquish Soul can use Revolution Synchron better than the deck that's supposed to be using Revolution Synchron.
Oh, okay. No, then the junk deck is definitely bad. I
Okay.
would not play the junk deck.
Yeah, I wouldn't play the junk deck either. Sky Striker, I wouldn't play this deck.
Not good.
Yeah, it's just not good. Yeah. You can give them 3 engages. It honestly doesn't matter. Just the plays have been telegraphed for years. Everyone knows how to play against this deck. Distials exist. It's literally Ray versus the world. Like everything is just really good against this deck. It has no good matchups other than maybe Widow Anchoring. I don't even know. Just everything is just too big for them to answer right away without having like a 4-card combo to play.
And Droll is so prevalent in the meta, so I don't see it doing anything really.
Yeah, even just ashing Engage really well timed. Just the answer to it, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And I think if they don't open a floodgate, they'll just get overran by someone with
Mhm.
decks.
Definitely. So yeah, we have the Heavenly Spheres, which represents Dragon Link. I think it's anticipated to be hit on the list. That's a discussion for another day. But I would probably put it above Lab a little bit. Um, I just don't think it has bad matchups, but at the same time, it does get checked by Droll a little bit, so maybe it does deserve to be behind Lab.
I put it ahead of Lab, just because even if they get rolled, just ending on spheres, that's already disrupt and a follow up. So that's literally sometimes that could be enough to either win you the game or just survive that next turn. And then the next turn, if they don't have another draw, you're just gonna kill them, whatever matchup it is, unless they open a floodgate, of course, like a Tikaboo or something. And so yeah, I'd put it as the best 1.5.
Yeah, I think those two are interchangeable. Funny enough, they're the one deck won worlds and one deck was like expected to win worlds. But yeah, right next to each other is where they should be.
Okay, I would have. I personally would have had it up in tier 1. I definitely think it's a tier 1 deck. It's really good, and it just won worlds. It's always adaptable. It's just I feel like it's just a good deck. I feel like it's better than everything under it. But I think 1.5 is fair. It is at the top of 1.5, so it's pretty fair to me.
Yeah, I do see what you mean about it being in tier 1, but yeah, it being at the top of 1.5 feels more right, just because when you look at the decks below it, from what we have right now, it has a pretty good matchup for all of them. But then when you look above, I feel like it can't beat the best decks as effectively. Like it struggles to beat Cash and it struggles to beat Purely, so therefore it can't. It's not even like a rock paper scissors type question. It's just strictly Cash Tira and Purely are gonna contend with each other, and they don't really consider Dragon Link as a factor.
Yeah, I can understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, runic variants. I think this would exclude probably Sprite. I don't really see anyone play anything other than like the Sprite runic for hire. Runic stun, I guess, exists.
Not good.
Runic Chimera. But I would probably put that still as part of the branded Chimera slot that we have above. You think it's not good? I feel like it would just be
like if it's just
on above Rogue. Yeah.
Ironic, I feel like it doesn't do anything, right? I mean, they only have 2 fountains.
Yeah, but I feel like most people just play 2 anyway. That's kind of like a meme.
Let's leave it there then.
Yeah, I think Runic would be like Runic Stun, right? Or something like that. Yeah, it is a rogue deck at best. So, yeah, I think bottom of rogue is good.
Okay. And then we got Sword. This deck is, it's got decent power, decent consistency, decent ceiling, but the adjective I use is decent, so to describe the whole deck. It doesn't really excel in a lot of areas. It can OTK, which is nice. But I feel like most of the time when this deck wins, it's because it has a 4-card unsearchable combo. And I feel like a lot or floodgates, and a lot of decks with that type of positioning would perform better. So I would just put this probably, kind of want to put it ahead of Vanquish, but just due to numbers alone, I kind of wanted to even just drop it below Salad. No one really has been topping the deck.
That's what I was gonna say also, because their best floodgate is Rivalry, but as you see, most of these decks, they don't care about Rivalry. Like Dragon Link, Sun Avalon, Rescue, Infernoble, Mathmic. But Tikaboo, for Vanquish, they beat all of these decks with just flipping one card. So I'd say, yeah, Sword Soul can go right there, and or even Rogue next to Blue. Like, I don't know, there's better options basically, and their floodgates aren't really that good right now. Or yeah,
Any other thoughts on this one? I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, pretty much is. I would have put it definitely in Rogue, maybe the top of Rogue. So where you have it is pretty much the same. But yeah, it hasn't really performed that well, I don't think, and nothing has really changed. It, everybody knows how to play against it. It doesn't seem like the best choice right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're gonna put it at the same level as these other tier 2 decks, if you see it the same way, it's because their hand was cracked. And if their hand was like a more commonly seen hand, a more typical hand, then it drops down to Rogue. So really, either one would be fine.
let's just
Yeah.
to Rogue.
I do want to put it in Rogue, or yeah,
because I feel like all of these other tier 2 decks are like much better than Sword Soul. And
because out of all these tier 2 decks, excluding, I know. Well, I should just say it loses to D Barrier more than like all the other ones.
Yeah,
at the same time, which is a really popular side deck card. So, but I think it is a little bit better than Slew just because of the matchups. I feel like it has some pretty good matchups, as opposed to Flu just, not really having really, really good matchups.
Yeah.
And then, let's do tier. With the introduction of Revolution, I think the deck has a lot of cool plays. It's just a luck reliant strategy, I feel like, a lot of the time, depending on the mills. Like, yes, of course, this is definitely a deck where in the hands of the right pilot, it's going to do something. But if you're not milling the right cards, your ceiling is just being lowered by the deck's functionality.
Mm-hmm.
So just based on that alone, I feel like it's either between the top of Rogue or probably just put it. I'd probably put it
Rogue.
Top Rogue. I feel like it's somewhere between Salad and Vanquish, or behind Salad.
Well,
I don't want to put it here.
Just to give you the data statistics, it actually has a lower win rate than Sky Striker, which we even put at not good. But like you said, it depends on the pilot. So that's why I was saying in the middle, Rogue.
Yeah. So I think that the statistic is an interesting insight to it, but at the same time, you can interpret it as the following: like, people want to play the deck because they enjoy it, not necessarily because they want to win with it. And sometimes it does well, and that you might not have a good pilot just because they themselves like the idea of the randomness that the deck has. Whereas, like, as opposed to like looking at a Sky Striker player, they have to love Sky Striker to want to play that deck. So it's gonna have a higher ceiling. You're gonna have higher quality pilots playing Sky Striker than a typical tier element pilot, I feel like. So I feel like there's a little bit of something that has to be like a factor in the win rates of those decks.
Yeah. Excuse me. Another thing that it could be actually too is you guys keep saying right pilot. I think it just has to be your day. You just have to have that luck for that game at that moment. Because it could very well just be people don't like their first mill and then they just quit, right? I'm not sure if that affects a percentage, but if it does, I can definitely see that happening. I definitely think this deck has days where it is tier 2. I think it has days where it's just not good. Just don't even play it. So I'm very torn on this deck. It could be very, very up or very down, depending on how the day is going, I guess.
It's tricky to place it. I personally rate it higher than the 3 decks ahead of it in tier 2. Another issue with it, besides being mill reliant, is that it loses hard to the top 3 decks. Cash, Bystials, even.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
So yeah, for that reason, maybe right now it could be Rogue bottom of tier 2. But if a Rise Heart is not no longer in the format,
Basically,
maybe
the first three decks have to be hit in some way for this deck to be
right.
better. Because Noir can spin from the graveyard.
Hmm.
Vistials are in the format, and a Rise Heart just doesn't let them play in general. Yeah, sounds about right. That is a good point. Unchained. This one has been performing really well. I'm a little bit surprised, but at the same time, after playing against it, I could definitely understand it now why it's performing really well. It just doesn't have bad matchups. Honestly, I feel like the only bad matchup you could argue would be not branded Chimera, but the actual branded deck. Just something turbos out Mirror Jade and can consistently get it with a bunch of follow up that doesn't have to rely on destroying to interrupt their opponent. But yeah, it's been performing really well. It has good matchups against like most of these decks. It just loses to Nib. Like Niv, I think, is better than Troll personally right now. And a lot of people are maining one or the other. So you're basically taking a 50-50 chance on your opponent playing one of the two. But just from tops, I feel like it kind of goes maybe even above Lab. I feel like it goes a little bit above Lab, but I'm going to put them next to each other for now. Yeah, I think that's just a good spot for them.
Yeah, I'll put them there as well because for one, they don't lose to draw. They just keep going or whatever because they summon from the deck. And what was the other thing I was gonna mention? Yeah, I guess the end board is pretty decent as well. It's like a link away and like negates 2 summons and then a pop. And the recursion, well, the follow up is also pretty good with that deck. Yeah, I guess Nib is the only Nib, and if they didn't open and if extenders like someone ashes you, if you have another extender, you just keep going. But with Nib, it you have to basically save like one extra summon. So because I saw this on yesterday on Jesse Cotton's stream. He got nibbed, but he still made the almost the same end board, not without the link, the XYZ, because you only play one. But yeah, he was playing against a lab player, so he got nibbed. He went tactics, looked and took one of the furniture, and that guy had already chained one of them, so he had just the set trap and nib. But Jesse made the link 4, popped the trap, and then the lab player basically had no cards. So, I guess nib would be the only out unless you play around it. So that's a good spot, 1.5.
Yeah, I like it there. I like it there also. I think I would actually drop it a little bit, just a little bit, and put it next to the branded and the rescue ace. I mean, the Chimera and the rescue ace. And my main reason is just because I feel like the representation is pretty much the same as the Chimera deck. And I do think the Rika and Lab are better decks and have better wins also. But I do think it's a very strong deck. It is just, sometimes a well-timed Ash can be very good. But I think it's a strong deck.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's as strong as I can go tier mid of tier 1.5 is fine. I don't think it's as strong as Lab or Rika.
So would you be better off kind of like in this positioning, maybe?
I think after hearing what you guys had to say, sure. Personally, I'm not that high on this deck. I think it doesn't have as much going for it as Rescue Ace or Chimera. Other than that, it's a little more resilient in that they all float. But the other ones, aside from that attribute, the other ones have more versatility, I would say.
Yeah, that's tough to place it then. Um, I was mainly considering performance, like as the main factor. But if we're just considering like baseline, then yeah, I'd probably have to agree. It probably is worse than these two. But did you have any thoughts on that, Jesus?
I was gonna mention one extra detail that they can still play under shifter, just because they say they has to be destroyed, but doesn't have to be sent to the grave, so they can still like make something. But yeah, that's my only extra input.
Well, if we're talking about shifter, then maybe this would work out better. I don't know. Ooh, wait, there.
Yeah, I think those three are honestly interchangeable. They're the new decks in the format, right? And know how good they are. We just kind of know that Unchained and Chimera have been performing pretty well recently.
Now, the last one, which is, it's sad to see this deck fall off, just because it's a personal favorite of mine, but I think it's just probably the bottom of tier 2, or maybe even after Flu and Rogue. I just think the deck is just way too easily telegraphed. It does play around a lot of hand traps, like Droll. Doesn't really lose to Shifter that hard. Of course, on their own terms, they don't lose to Shifter. But when they're forced to play under Shifter, that's a different story, I feel like. Yeah, I'd probably just put it here. I don't really see anyone playing it.
Yeah.
I still think it's better than Mathmech, though, because I think it's just more consistent than hard opening circular.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fair.
The one thing I was gonna say, usually the live twin sprite version is the most popular, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other one's pretty decent, and usually they can't get nabbed because gigantic. Yeah, it's fair. I mean, they lost Elf and they only have 2 starters, and Ronin.
Yeah, I think Sprite and Rogue makes sense. The other Sprite variant is that for higher runic one, and I think that one is placed pretty much where it should be also.
Okay, well, I think that wraps it up then. I mean, I don't really have any complaints on the finalized version of this. I feel like it's better than where we started. We did rotate a couple of these out, but I think that's fine as we're kind of talking through everything. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the list itself.
Same.
Yeah, I also like it. I think
I agree.
Okay, well, that's the tier list, guys. Do you guys have any different opinions on the placements of these? Let us know. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and yeah, let us know if you want to see a potential ban list prediction video or wish list, and yeah, we can get that started for you guys. But for now, this is Sinister Gaming out.